Alright, Rise Up, the game of people and power. I want to go in depth in the game's rules. I've since watched the TESA Collective's videos on how to get the board set up and how to get your activists. I'll just put them on the board like that. Alright. Here's the 5 activists popped out, system cards, movement cards, and skill. Alright, we'll go. Here's the standard player sheet. Here's the simplified player sheet that's on the back. Alright, and then we'll go through and read the rules. Alright, Rise Up rules. Rise Up is a cooperative game for 2 to 5 players, where everyone wins or loses together. All players are on the same team. You'll build a movement and take on a system. You'll have to make decisions and strategize as a group. Rise Up is also a storytelling game. As you play, cards will prompt you to narrate the story of your movement and the system you're taking on. Rise Up is an enjoyable way to explore social movements and community organizing, even though it's not a direct simulation of how movements are built. Before playing your first game, pop out all the power markers, supporter markers, and activist attendees from their sheets. Fold each activist standee in half and slide it into a card stand. We include an extra movement, system, and supporter markers in case any are lost. Rise Up comes with 2 versions. Each version takes about 1 to 1.5 hours to play. Each version can also be played with 2 to 5 players, though each has a recommended best number of players. Before continuing, choose which version you want to play. Rise Up Standard Play. Rise Up Standard Play is the standard version of the game, great for game nights. For people who are accustomed to games, it is a strategy game. Continue reading on the next page or go to toolboxforedge.org/standard rules to watch video instructions. That's best with 3 to 5 players, 1 to 1.5 hours. Or simplified play, best with 2 to 4 players, 1 to 1.5 hours. Rise Up Simplified play is a different version of the game with rules that are considerably simpler and faster to learn. It's great for people who are less accustomed to board games and for young people as well as in larger group settings such as workshops and classrooms. Turn to page 12 to continue reading or go to toolboxforedge.org/simplified rules to watch video instructions. Rise Up is dedicated to the memory of Walter Van Slyck. Read more here. Rise Up Standard Play. Setting up. Set up the game board. Flip the board to the side that says Rise Up, the game of people and power. Put a movement power marker on the 0 level of the board's 10 movement power tracks. Put a system power marker on the 0 level of the board's 10 system power tracks. Alright, and I put a marker, the blue with the star and the red X, on each of the 10 different ones. Set up the decks. Shuffle the movement deck, system deck, and skill deck. Put the movement deck to the left of the board, and put the system deck to the right of the board. Take player sheets. Each player takes a player sheet and flips it to the side that says Rise Up Standard Player Sheet with the purple header. Draw skill cards. Each player draws a card from the skill deck and places it face up on their player sheet. Place the remaining skill cards back in the box. Alright, so I put a skill card on this player sheet, Educator. You can reduce your supporters by 2 spaces. -1 system power to your current place. Victory places farms. And then on the other player sheet, they got the card Educator for reduce your supporters by 2 spaces, -1 system power to your current place for the system to reduce. Victory place is campuses. Place supporter markers. Each player places a supporter marker on the 2 space of the supporters track of their player sheet, showing that they have 2 supporters. The supporter marker is the little hand, the purple hand on the left, at the 2 spot. Place activist standees. Each player places an activist standee on their victory place, which is listed on their skill card. So I put one activist on farms and the other one on campuses to correspond with these cards. Draw movement cards. Each player draws 2 cards from the movement deck. Throughout the game, the players may show each other the movement cards in their hands. Alright, one player drew we organize a flash mob car with a reroll. Then we throw a party for our cause, optional story discussion, where did we have the party, +1 to the supporter. And then the other player drew some of our supporters go on the hunger strike. And then we take over a public space. Optional story discussion, what public space did we take over and why. Choose the difficulty. Take a look at the difficulty levels on page 11. If you are playing with 2 players, you must use the variance setup and rules listed there. If it's your first time playing, continue reading the rules before selecting a difficulty. Choose the first player. Pick someone to play the first turn, or just roll the die to randomly determine who goes first. Story building. Before you begin, decide as a group what kind of movements you are building, what kind of system you are fighting against, or both. Your story can be serious and based in the real world, like stop a polluting factory from dumping chemicals into our river, or it can be something sillier, like we're fighting for dragons' rights. Think about what you want to stop or change. Once you decide, you're ready to build your movement. You only need to come up with a sentence. The game will tease your story out as you play. Winning and losing. In Rise Up, everyone wins or loses together. Your side is called your movement, and the opposing side is called the system. As a team, your movement must score more victories than the system in the various places on the board, such as neighborhoods, media, workplaces, and government. Everybody wins if your movement scores 5 victories, including a victory in each player's victory place, listed on their skill card. Hooray! 5 victories. Everyone loses if the system scores 4 victories, or if any player starts, not ends, their turn with 0 supporters. 4 victories for the system. Gaining and losing power. The board has 10 places, and each place has a track showing each side's power. During the game, played cards will add or subtract power from the sides in various places. When a side gains or loses power in a place, move its power marker up or down to show this change. Power markers cannot move below the 0 level or above the 4 level. Scoring victories. If a side reaches 4 power in a place, it scores a victory there. To show this, flip the power marker there to the side that shows victory. A side with a victory in a place can no longer gain or lose power there. However, both sides can score a victory in the same place. If your movement scores a victory in a place first, the system can still gain or lose power there. The same is true if the system scores a victory in a place first. If both sides have scored a victory in the same place, these victories do not cancel out. Example, your movement and the system have both scored a victory in neighborhoods, so each side has 1 victory. First victory. If the system scores a victory in a place before your movement does, then each player immediately loses 1 supporter. Playing your turn. On your turn, perform the following 4 steps in order. Step 1. Add power. Roll the die, then add 1 system power to both places whose number matches the number you rolled. However, if you roll a 6, you instead add 1 movement power to the place with your activist. Hooray. Example, you roll a 3, so you must add 1 system power to farms and environment. Step 2. Gain support. You draw 1 movement card and gain 1 supporter. Step 3. Perform actions. You may perform the actions described below. You may continue to perform actions one at a time in any order or any number of times until you choose to stop or cannot perform anymore. Play a movement card. Select a card from your hand, reduce your supporters as shown on the card, and resolve its effects. Then begin a chain of events. More on the next page. Use your skill card. To use this effect, reduce your supporters by amount written on the left, and then resolve the effect written on the right. When you use your skill cards, do not discard it. You will keep it throughout the game. Move your activist. Reduce your supporters by 1, then move your activist to any place. Step 4. Play the system. Draw a system card and follow its instructions. Then, the next clockwise player takes their turn. Most system cards will hinder you or your movement, though there are a few good cards hidden in the deck. Some system cards have simple instructions, while others have a decision for everyone to make together. Play movement cards. At various times during the game, you can play movement cards. These cards let you take on the system, build your movement, and help your fellow players. To play a movement card, you must first reduce your supporters by the number written on the card's top left corner. You must have the required number of supporters before playing the card. You cannot use supporters you would gain from a card in order to play the card. After reducing your supporters, read the narrative title out loud. Then you may use the card's effects indicated by the symbols on the bottom. If a card has multiple effects, you choose which to use, including none or all of them. You may play a card even if you cannot resolve some of its effects. After playing a card, discard it. The systems and the symbols and their effects. The symbols at the bottom of the movement card shows the card's effects. Some effects have higher numbers than 1. This list is also on your player sheet. Add 1 movement power to your activist's current place. Every player, including you, draws a movement card. Subtract 1 system power from your activist's current place. Every player, including you, gains 1 supporter. Reroll. When the player rolls the die, any player can immediately play a card with this symbol to re-roll the die, even if it is not their turn. Chain of events. When you finish resolving a movement card, you start a chain of events. When a chain of events begins, if the next clockwise player has a movement card with the same icon in the upper right corner, they may play that card on your turn. This player must still reduce supporters to play the card as normal. Then the second next clockwise player may play a movement card in the same way. Continue this until every player has had an opportunity. If a player cannot or does not want to play a card into the chain of events, the next player still gets an opportunity to do so. You play. Support for our movement comes in from around the world. Optional story discussion. Support for our movement comes in from around the world. Optional story discussion. How do we get global support? +2, +2. Player 2 can play. We swarm a system building with hundreds of people. +1 star, +1 cards. Player 3 can play. We get thousands of people to call a representative of the system and demand change. Optional story discussion. How did we get so many people to call in? When the chain of events ends, you continue your turn. If you play another movement card as an action during your turn, this begins another chain of events. Card effects during the chain of events. If another player plays a movement card into your chain of events, and that card adds or removes power, it affects the place with that player's activist, not the place with your activist. The system reacts. If a movement power marker lands on a red X on the track, immediately draw and resolve a system card. Then if the system reacted during a chain of events, the chain ends. If the marker moves past a red X but does not land on it, do not draw and resolve a system card. After resolving the system card, you continue your turn as normal. You must still draw a system card during step 4, play the system. Maximums and minimums. You cannot have more than 4 movement cards in your hand. If you must draw beyond 4 cards, you don't draw one. If you must discard a movement card but have none in your hand, do nothing. You cannot have more than 6 supporters or fewer than 0 supporters. If you would increase above 6 supporters or decrease below 0 supporters, do nothing. Maximum card maximum 4. Supporters maximum 6. Page 11, choosing your difficulty level. You may choose to play Rise Up at various difficulty levels. Easiest, all places start with 0 system power. Easy, all 1s and 2s spaces start with 1 system power. Medium, all 1, 2, 3, and 4 places start with 1 system power. Hard, every place starts with 1 system power. Hardest, every place starts with 1 system power, and the system only needs to score 2 victories to win. 5 players only. Rise Up gets easier with more players. If you have 4 or 5 players, we recommend choosing medium or hard difficulty. Bonus challenge. Players cannot show each other the movement cards in their hands or share any information about them. You can spice up any difficulty level with this bonus challenge. 2-player rules. Every place starts with a 2 movement power and 0 system power. Every player starts with 4 supporters instead of 2. Also, your movement only needs to score 4 victories to win instead of 5. Alright, page 12, Rise Up Simplified play. Setting up. Gather pieces, take all the decks and pieces out of the box except for the skill cards. You won't use them for this version. Place the board and flip it to the side that says Rise Up Simplified play. Set up the decks. Shuffle the movement deck and the system deck. Put the movement deck to the left of the board and put the system deck to the right of the board. Place power markers. Put a movement power marker on the 0 level of the board's 10 movement power tracks. Put a system power marker on the 1 level of the board's 10 system power tracks. Set up player sheets. Each player takes a player sheet and flips it to the side that says Rise Up Simplified with a blue header. Then each player places a supporter marker on the 3 space on their player sheet, showing that they have 3 supporters. 5. Draw movement cards. Each player draws 1 card from the movement deck. Throughout the game, the players may show each other the cards in their hands. 6. Place activist standees. Each player takes an activist standee and places it on the red X space on any one of the 10 places on the board. Multiple activists cannot be on the same space. Choose your difficulty. If it's your first time playing, continue reading. If not, choose your difficulty on page 16. 8. Choose your first player. Pick someone to play the first turn, or just roll the die to randomly determine who goes first. Story building and getting started. Before you begin, decide as a group what kind of movement you're building, what kind of system you're fighting against, or both. Your story can be serious or based in the real world, like stop a polluting factory from dumping chemicals into our river, or it can be something sillier like we're fighting for dragons' rights. Think about what you want to stop or change. Once you decide, you're ready to build your movement. You only need to come up with a sentence. The game will tease your story out as you play. Winning and losing. In Rise Up, everyone wins or loses together. Your side is called your movement. An opposing side is called the system. The blue star, everyone wins if your movement scores 3 victories. The red X, everyone loses if the system scores 3 victories or if any player has 0 supporters. Gaining and losing power. The board has 10 places, and each place has a track showing each side's power. During the game, cards you play and places you land on will add or subtract power from the sides in various places. When a side gains or loses power in a place, move its power marker up or down to show this change. Power markers cannot move below the 0 level or above the 4 level. Scoring victories. If a side reaches 4 power in a place, it scores a victory there. To show this, flip the power marker there to the side that shows victory. From now on, neither side can gain or lose power in that place. Playing your turn. On your turn, roll the die and move your activist forward along the clockwise arrows by spaces equal to your roll. If your activist lands on the same space as another activist, move your activist forward to the next space. 2. Then follow the instructions for the space you land on as listed below. Red X card. You must draw a system card and follow its instructions. +1 for the system. +1 or +2 system. You must add this amount of system power to your activist's current place. Minus supporter every player card. Minus supporter every player. Every player, including you, loses 1 supporter. Movement card icon. These spaces will help you play movement cards from your hand. This will be explained on the next page. Finally, you may do one action of your choice. Organize, you gain 1 supporter. Educate, you draw 1 movement card. Or agitate, you play 1 movement card. After this, the next clockwise player takes their turn. Maximums and minimums. You cannot have more than 4 movement cards in your hand. If you would draw beyond 4 cards, don't draw 1. You must discard a movement card but have none in your hand, do nothing. You cannot have more than 6 supporters. If you would increase above 6 supporters, do nothing. If you would decrease 2 or below 0 supporters, everyone loses. Movement card maximum 4, supporters maximum 6, 0 supporters, everyone loses. Playing movement cards. At various times during the game, you can play movement cards. These cards let you take on the system, build your movement, and help your fellow players. To play a movement card, you must first reduce your supporters by the number written on the card's top left corner. You must have the required number of supporters before playing the card. You cannot use supporters you would gain from a card in order to play the card. After reducing your supporters, read the narrative title out loud. Then you may use the card's effects indicated by the symbols at the bottom. If a card has multiple effects, you choose which to use, including none or all of them. You may play a card even if you cannot resolve some of its effects. After playing a card, discard it. Example given, support for our movement comes in from around the world. Optional story discussion, how do we get global support? Plus 2 blue stars, plus 2 to all supporters. Symbols and their effects. Add 1 movement power to your activist's current place. Every player, including you, draws a movement card. Subtract 1 system power from your activist's current place. Reroll. When a player rolls the die, any player can immediately play a card with a symbol to reroll the die, even if it's not their turn. The every player icon. Including you, gains 1 supporter. The movement card icon. If the icon on your current space matches the icon in the top right corner of a movement card you want to play, you can play it without losing any supporters. This counts as your 1 action for your turn. Page 16, the back page of the rulebook. Choosing your difficulty level. After your first time playing, you might want to make the game easier or harder. Easy, start with all system markers on the 0 level. Regular, start with all system markers on the 1 level. Hard, start all system markers on the 1 level, and the system only needs 2 victories to win instead of 3 victories. If you're using a Rise Up Simplified play in a workshop setting, choose the regular difficulty level. Credits to TESA Collective, Rise Up is a product of the TESA Collective, the Toolbox for Education and Social Action. TESA creates tools and programs for your cause. Want to learn more or work together? Go to toolboxforeducation.org. toolboxfored.org. Graphic design, Molly McLeod is a designer, artist, and educator. She helps organizations working towards social justice communicate more effectively and design awesome things. MollyMcLeod.com at Molly Ampersand. Artwork by Design Action Collective, designaction.org. Printed ethically by community printers, comprinters.com. Editing by Joshua Yearsley, joshuayearsley.com. Thanks to all our Kickstarter backers for making Rise Up possible. We especially want to thank two organizations for their generous contributions to the game's production. SEIU, we are the Service Employees International Union, an organization of 2 million members united by the belief in the dignity and worth of workers and the services they provide, dedicated to improving the lives of workers and their families and creating a more just and humane society. SEIU.org. The Flux Movement. Flux is a global initiative for driving mass adoption of the world's most prosperous democratic system. VoteFlux.org. Alright, that concludes reading through the rules. I'll give like a quick overview of just what the board looks like. I just had 2 players, one at farms and over there, and then one more look at player 1's board and player 2 board. Alright, hope you enjoyed this in-depth reading of the rules, and yeah, hope you come play it sometime.